So.
Yeah. I'm 55 years old. Today? No, right, like. Oh, you don't want to walk.
As long as we don't throw it at people. Mr. Rice said, do not give it to you. No. Everyone feels considered. And everything that you would do anything abnormal. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Monday, November 18th, 2024 Seaford Board of Education meeting. My name is Kim Hopkins, and I will be presiding over it. I am calling this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. The next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda as presented, and I would need a motion.
I'll try to move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Man, that sounded great. Like the secret choir. All right, so before we start this moment of silence, we did lose a couple people since our last board meeting. Recently, we lost Mrs. Kaiser. We lost her on November the 10th. She worked in Seaford, from many of you know better than I, from 1966 to 1993. I was blessed to have her as my fifth grade English teacher at Fred Douglass. And then I had her, you had her too. And then I was blessed to have her again in seventh grade before she retired throughout the school year. And then Mrs. Cannon, may she rest in peace, took over for her for our English class. But like I was telling my board colleagues, I remember her giving me a hug every day. And I tell you, every day, it was so nurturing. I never met a more loving, warm, and caring woman. Like, she always had a smile on her face. And I remember the last time I seen her, she was at a rehab facility and I had students there for clinical. And just the fact that we saw each other, we just both start crying like babies. We looked terrible, but it was so much love. So much love. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, for her family, her friends, for our district, much respect to her, and we're truly sorry for their loss. Also, we lost Mr. John Marty Martin. He actually isn't a Blue Jay, but he was on the board for Capital School District, and he passed away recently. So for his family, we're sorry for your loss as well. He was I'm taking it he wasn't an older fella. And I think I remember him being in New Orleans. At least I feel like he was there with us. I'm not sure. But either way, they lost one of their members. And for that, we truly are sorry. So please take a moment of silence. All right, please be seated. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our October 21st board meeting. I was not at that meeting, but I would need a motion to approve those minutes.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes for November 18th, 2024.
Jeff Gibbs, our second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions or recusals? And I'll abstain. And that motion carries. The next item on our agenda is public participation, and I do not have any. And Ms. Karen's still shaking her head. She's like, none slid through. So we'll go past that one. The next item on our agenda is reports and presentations, and we have presentation right now.
Yeah.
Dr. D.
Hence the full house. Welcome, everyone, this evening. It's lovely to have you here. I wanted to make sure I had all of my information right this evening. So we're actually gonna start this evening with Mr. Parker. If Mr. Parker would come forward, we have actually two groups that we're recognizing tonight for our Friend of Seaford. Mr. Parker has served as the Seaford School District Crossing Guard for 22 years. He was with the city of Seaford for 33 years. For a career of 55 years. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
I applaud you, sir. That is so admirable, and I just congratulate you. And I look at you, I feel like we're the same age, so I'm not really sure how that's possible. And it was lovely to see you earlier this week at the city ceremony, and so we'll get our picture taken again, if that's okay.
Okay.
We'll go around this side. Right across there. This hot place. You got it. Right here. It's in the hot. Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah.
You sure? Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for all.
Thank you. Yeah.
Really appreciate it. You're gonna wrap up all day. Thank you.
You know that range on how much you want now.
Okay. Thank you, thank you.
All right, and I said before, with a name like DiGirolamo, I like to make sure I practice the names ahead of time so that I get them right. So we have a group here from the Seaford Starfish Society. Multiple contributions over the years to our schools in terms of supplies for students, for our schools, just supporting staff members and the district as a whole. And we thank you for those contributions. There have multiple nominations this year. So we wanted to recognize that. So here this evening, we have Kathy Adams, Lori Hawk, Paula Smith, Marianne Swift, Bonnie Hastings, Susan Chambers, Melissa Wills, Kim Spiker, Sherry Anthony, Marcia Dukes, Rhonda Hitch, Susan Michael, and Daphne Trice. Did I get everybody? Wonderful. So we'll do a group picture as well. Yeah. People go in the front for this one.
That's Brad.
Did I get it back?
I should just sit on the desk.
Yeah, don't encourage me. It's fine. I can be my first grade teacher.
Oh.
Anthony needs to be in the back. Right there. Are we good?
Are we okay?
And you let me know, I'll make everything. You got it. 1, 2, 3. All right, then hold on. Dr. D, scoot over a little bit. Yeah, perfect. All right. Okay. Ms. Wells, a little bit, you're kind of.
Why aren't you in this picture with me?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. There we go.
Awesome. People be actually have to congratulate Hey, Jack, how are you? I'm good. Thank you for joining us. And we do. Yeah, well, we just had a meeting Tuesday night. It's like, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. This will be, this is squeeze, this, let's go. Oh, I'm coming. Got her for the rest of the meeting. Now I think they got me the meeting. Come on. Bye,
I wanna hang out with them.
This is,
I'm serious.
no.
Have fun.
That is, next meetings. Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
Everybody love us.
I know.
Back to the real meat now.
You know.
Back to the real meat.
Yeah, now I wanna go with them. All right, next item on our agenda is superintendent's communication. Dr. D, what do you have for us?
Well, I had the same thought as you did during the Pledge of Allegiance. It was nice hearing all of those voices. It's funny, when you said that, I was like, no, I had the same thought, but here we are, welcome. And this last push, this is our first full week of school during the month of November. And we will soon be at Thanksgiving, and before you know it, it will be spring break. Or at least Christmas. But things are going well. I think it's definitely that time of year. People are starting to feel a little bit of that fatigue of, just in the classroom and working and teaching and athletics and sports and meetings and PLCs and doing all the things, but folks are doing a good job. We hosted Dr. Sharon Walpole this week. Perhaps you saw that. Kristen Brent was kind enough to take some pictures and share that information. Dr. Jeanette walked and visited our middle school and West Seaford Elementary School so that Dr. Walpole could see bookworms in action at those two schools. And she has lots of good things to say, and she also gives us feedback and gives us recommendations for improvement, which we also appreciate. And so we're just trucking along. Also looking forward to making plans for the National School Board Conference that will be quickly approaching. So I look forward to having conversations with you about that. And that's all I have. Mike.
Next item on our agenda is board communications. So colleague, I missed it, right? He's like, do you ring?
We do. So the SBA has released their legislative priorities for this General Assembly. We are 9 priorities in total, and I'll send you guys the full list. I'll just go through, the bigger categories. So priority 1 is state student-based unit account funding system. So as you guys know, the Public Education Funding Commission is working and going, and I co-chair that commission as well. So as far as the SBA goes, they want to keep the unit count system, but definitely broaden it and open it up. Make it, make sure that there are units for, additional units for multi-language learners and for low-income students and those things like that, while also increasing flexibility in the funding that we receive. Priority 2, burden of proof, and flipping around the burden of proof. As you guys know, Delaware Education is the only place in this country where the burden of proof is on the party that, of the defendant. Yes, on the defendant. So flipping that so that it aligns with literally every other system in our country. Number 3, school safety and security. Priority 4, mental health and behavioral health services. Priority 5 is pre-K support, including capital funding for certification for those facilities. Adequate state funding, which we talk about, which would also include capital funding, including minor cap and major cap increases, and getting rid of the give back. Priority 7, local district authority, because as you know, that's the big thing with the SBA, keeping local control. Priority 8 is switching from the SAT as the sole measure of student success for high school students, and supporting the state and the Department of Education in creating something different, anything different, something better. And then priority 9 are general issues that the same things that we've been advocating for decades, for years. That's all I
I
have.
like those. Those are,
ambitious.
yeah, but those are really good ones.
And they're also aligned with what the superintendent said discussed, so.
And that's usually the goal. That's usually the goal, so that we're all marching to the same tune on the same page and advocating for the same things.
Oh, I do. I like that. And I just wanted to add, when Dr. Z was talking about upcoming things, we do have the educational support professional of the year coming up December
Second.
second.
The Monday after we come back from Thanksgiving. Yes.
So that will happen in Dover, and I'm looking forward to that. It's always an exciting time to celebrate our educators. And that's all I have, unless anyone else has anything else. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is goals and priorities, presentation. If this is right, we have, Mr. Hill and Mr. Herman.
First will be the first. You want the long version or the short version? It catches a lot shorter line.
All right. I want the short informative.
Okay, and if it's short informative, I'm long and try to be informative. That's it.
Patrick, warm us up then.
Dr. Bishop said he wants it straight to the point.
Exactly.
I saw it in your eyes.
20 slides versus 2. Yeah. All right, I'll try to be quick with this. First off, I wanted to thank the board and the administration for the support throughout ESSER. I'm happy to be in front of you tonight and tell you that we did not get one dime back. We spent everything that we were given, and that's kudos to everybody sitting in the room too. There was a lot of work that went into that, from secretaries to everybody. It was huge. So with that being said, it's been a journey throughout ESSER. If you know anything about architects and contractors and engineers, it's been a juggling act, trying to make everything fit into the timeframes that we were given and the amount of work that we were doing. Because I also want to note that in the small state of Delaware, every school district was getting the same funding at the same time. So it was definitely a task, but with this board support and administrative support that we had in this district, I was able to get out ahead of a lot of people. So we got a lot of great work done throughout ESSER. So the agenda for tonight is kind of like, I'm going to update you on the ESSER spending, review a few ESSER projects, and then talk a little bit about the school district's use of available local funding, which is something we haven't really talked about throughout ESSER. But the relief that the ESSER money gave to the local funding side of it, we were able to do some projects that we would have never done otherwise. And then a lot of that is like our small sheds were replaced with permanent buildings. that we store athletic equipment in, stuff like that. So we're looking at longevity and sustainability, right? Something for years to come that'll still be there when those sheds are long gone, because they really don't last. So next slide, Mr. Cameron. ESER one was focused more on getting students back in the building. If you remember, it seems like a long time ago, but basically, I'm proud to say that the Seaford School District was the first school district in the state to get everybody, kids and staff back into the buildings. So I'm still proud of that, very proud, to be honest with you. And a huge thank you goes out to our custodial staff and maintenance staff for making that happen for us. Because without them, we'd have never done it. They basically, we implemented a lot of new procedures like electrostatic misters and stuff like that to keep everybody safe, and was successful with it. So that was awesome.
Do we still use those misters?
We do, like if we have like a flu outbreak or something like that, or just general, outbreaks going along, we do use those stuff. So it wasn't a waste of money.
Right.
What we spent on those, we still have them. I do want to note that the playgrounds, before ESER came along, right before actually ESER came along, we did an assessment on our playground, which wasn't part of the building assessment. That was an assessment done separately, because building assessments, if you know anything about building assessments, they don't really cover like sidewalks, parking lots, all the exterior part of the building. They cover the building envelope and inside the building itself. So our playgrounds were out of ASTM and CPCSC standards, which was a huge concern for the district at that time. But then when ESER rolled in, we were able to use some of ESER funding and some of the local funding that was freed up through ESER to update our playgrounds. And a few of those were basically some replacements of units that were existing and additional equipment to allow us more social distancing. So the kids during COVID could get on the playgrounds and play safely, along with still meeting the protocol, the social distancing that we had. Next slide, Mr. Cameron. So this is another one that I think we did a good job of being sustainable. And just an example of it was our maintenance techs installed bottle-filled water fountains rather than us going out and purchasing a bunch of cases after cases of bottled water. We spent that money on what I thought would be sustainable, for the future. I mean, we replaced older water fountains that needed to be replaced, and our kids, it's funny because you walk through the buildings now, very few of them actually been down and used the older style water fountain. They're filling their bottles at the bottle post, and taking them back to the class with them. So, and then our buildings supported that through purchasing, reusable cups, the little jugs instead of, buying, like I said, bottled water. So that also carried into the future. I think so. I'm still use them in the buildings, those reusable, containers.
How often those water filters change?
Those water filters, actually, they have a light on them. So after so many, then the light lights up and then we have to go in and change the filter. Which all of that, we just got done checking, all of our lead in our water. We do that, the state did it a while back, but we do it every year anyway. And everything came back good on that. So we're within the regs on that. The 4 boilers were replaced as part of the first phase of the HVAC replacements, and we repaired facility repairs included a lot of repairing older plaster in our middle school and doing some room painting. And then in our auditorium, as you know, we added some seating that had the fold down desk arms, which allows it to be used not only as an auditorium, but also as a classroom. So that's what we kind of learned from ESER, was like, we needed ever available space that we had to be able to social distance and keep the number of kids we needed to in our buildings. So that's something we tried to keep in mind as we went through and spent the ESER money, was trying to keep that stuff in mind. Another example of that is our media center furniture that we bought could be double purposed as classroom furniture. So you could basically, in most of our elementary media centers, you can now have 2 separate classrooms inside that media center if you needed to. So that was something we try to keep in mind on that. The next one, Mr. Cameron. So basically in ESER 3, which was the last phase. We finished out, changing out 5 of our existing chillers. And those chillers are more energy efficient, than the older chillers. An example of that is, so I got last October, or this past October's, utility bill, and then the year before, 23. Basically, Central was 10,000 kWs less is what we used. And then the high school was even. Part of the reason for that is though that we didn't replace a lot of pumps and stuff in the high school. Because if you remember in 2012, we had just done the huge renovation, you know what I mean? So it kind of been a waste of money to go in there and pull all those new pumps out and all that stuff. So we didn't do that part of it. We chose to move past that one. The middle school was 24,400 kWs less than October of 23. Fred Douglass was 8,800 kWs more. But keep in mind that chiller wasn't replaced over there. That chiller was a 2015, so that was the only chiller that we did not replace. So it kind of tells the story right there as to how much more efficient the other chillers are. And in West Seaford, 5,000 kWs less than what they used in 23, 23.
So Fred Douglas is the only one that we haven't replaced?
Yes, Fred Douglas is the only one we haven't replaced, and it's a 2015, so
Still fairly.
it's still fairly, yeah. Just not as efficient as the newer chillers, they shows how efficient they are.
Yeah.
So basically, one thing I wanted to note was all the equipment that we replaced on ESSER can be repurposed. And I'm gonna say this, when we get a CN passed, to get a new building, I'm not gonna say, are we, I'm gonna say when we get one passed. We could actually use the mechanical equipment that we replaced on ESSER in those new buildings. So it can basically, the pumps, the chillers, all that stuff can be repurposed and part of the new, which would save us a little money on the CN. This past summer, we did a lot of HVAC duct cleaning. All the gymnasiums, cafeterias, auditoriums were professionally cleaned by an outside agency. And the reason for that, there was 2 reasons. I thought it was a good use of the ESSER money because it was pertaining to IAQ or indoor air quality. And the second thing was it kind of supports what we're moving into come this May for Senate Bill 270. Because we got DPH regulations coming down for indoor air quality inside our schools. So I thought the 2 kind of tied together. And additionally, we did about just under $1 million worth of repointing on our buildings. And that's like I've said before in some of our meetings, taking the masonry out, putting new masonry in, which makes those buildings watertight for those sections of buildings watertight for the next 25 to 30 years. All right, next one, Mr. Chamberlain. All right, so this right here kind of breaks it down as to how we spend our money. In sanitation lines, air quality lines, facility repair line, and learning loss. As learning loss was part of buildings and grounds, that kind of sounds a little weird. But basically it was the furniture, stuff like that in the media centers to support the learning part of it, was part of that. So that's how it was narrowed down. I do want to note that we did about, like I said, just under $13 million of air quality and facility repairs. Which was a lot of work, but the crazy thing is this last assessment that we had turned into for CNs, our middle school was noted at $70.8 million is what it's going to cost to renovate.
Wow.
To build a brand new building for 1,000 students is $72.1 million. So it kind of shows all the work we've done. We're still behind the 8 ball because CNs aren't getting passed. And that's something we discussed in our SPY meeting, which is everybody kind of does what I do in the state.
Yeah.
In the last SPY meeting we had, we discussed that, that without CNs being passed every year, and we understand where the state's at with it, but we're just getting further and further behind because you can't gain that back. The middle school tells a story, it's almost cheaper at this point to build a new building than it is to renovate the one we have. I'm gonna finish this one by saying a huge thank you to Donna Hardesty and Chris Maheta for keeping me straight while I was closing out. So that was there. So I was trying to keep the architect straight and the contractor straight and push everybody with both my feet to get through it. And there was times when I doubted myself. I'll be honest with you, over the summer, I was like, whew, man, I hope we make this. But we did. And like I said, a lot of support from those guys to keep me straight on the billing and all the other things that we needed to go along with it. But like I said, everybody in this room, a huge thank you for your support on that. Next one. It's just this one's just a pie chart for, kind of showing how we spent our ESSER in ESSER 2. Next one. ESSER 3. And then we get to the playground renovations. So part of the playground renovations, I just wanted to go through it briefly, was adding what you see here, the mulch and the black plastic surroundings to basically hold the mulch in, and that's part of the regulation, you know what I mean? So it's fall hazards basically for our students. So if they fall, they got the safety rubber underneath the main units, and then under our swing sets, you have the mulch series.
So some crisp pictures.
Yeah.
I was admiring my school in the background, I was like, that was real nice.
Yeah, it was sharp.
All right, so, this one kind of shows the next one, yeah, right there, Ken. This one kind of shows, I think, a good telltale of the chillers. So you can almost look at that, not knowing a whole lot about mechanical equipment, and tell that that one's a lot more efficient than this one sitting here. It looks like almost like an antique compared to something new there, you know what I'm saying? So it's, kudos to you guys for letting us get that equipment. Next one, the boiler is the same thing. The new boiler being on the right-hand side, you can definitely tell there's a big difference in new boilers and older boilers. Something I wanted to note is that the space that we gained back inside the boiler rooms with the new boilers, because the old ones are huge. So we gained a lot of space back in those boiler rooms. And that's important for my guys, because schools aren't built for storage. You know, we built schools to basically hold and accommodate what we need at that time. But there's no extra storage built into buildings. Even when we build new buildings, that's not accounted for.
And it was clean in there. When we think about, when I think about boilers, I always think about damp and mildewy, different things like that. I get this clean.
Thanks for bringing that up. Our boiler inspector walked around a few months ago, doing his annual inspection. And he said we have some of the cleanest boiler rooms.
Yeah.
And that's kudos to our building chiefs and our custodians. Like I said, and our maintenance guys, they take pride in what they do, and it definitely shows there that our boiler rooms are that clean.
Doing insurance and walking through and doing the different inspections.
And then, like I said, facility repairs was auditoriums, media centers, wall repairs in numerous buildings, painting, subfloor tile replacement, window transom replacement, installation of hand dryers, which was a huge one, because we spend roughly, in the past, we spent just about $100,000 a year on paper towel, toilet paper, and soap. That's unbelievable if you really think about it. But we got hand dryers now in our high school and middle school, and it's made a huge difference. I'll be able to report to you at the end of the year, maybe how much we saved, but definitely made a good step with that one. And that was done with ESSER also, keeping in mind that you don't have a touch point at that point. You just go underneath the hand dryer and put your hands underneath there. So.
Has it raised our electric bill much?
No, you could barely see it. We've made so many changes, to be honest with you, it's gonna take a while for all that to level out. Because with the chillers, the pumps, and the hand dryers, everything went in at one time.
Yes.
So it's really hard to say what's saving and what's not right now, you know what I mean? So, but I don't think it made, I guarantee it didn't, it's not $100,000 worth of paper towels and toilet paper. So the last thing I wanted to say on that one was, keeping in mind that our facility assessments did not, like I said before, did not include the parking lot, sidewalks, and our buildings. And we were able to replace or repair some of these with our local money that was, you know, basically freed up by ESSER, just taking care of the sustainable items, or basically the paper products, all that cleaning supplies and that stuff. So he did a pretty good job with that. All right, then the next one kind of shows a picture of the repointing that happened over the summer. And oh my, you can see the difference. It's that's a new repoint and that's the older. So you can kind of see how it's, and then Fred was really huge. I mean, that one, I told Cam when I came back after that one was finished, I said, look, we got to repoint the rest of it, because now the new look so bad, it makes the old look bad sometimes, you know, so. But you can see an example, a good example, I thought this picture was the older repointing, like, we've done a good job, a solid job over the last however many years, you wanna say, that building's 102 years old. So, but just going back and patching areas and doing stuff like that, but it was huge to have the funding to be able to go in and do large sections at a time, because then you can tighten everything right back up. So that's a pretty good one, I thought. The next one is their blades, roof coating. So we did a few, roof coatings with Esser, and basically what that does is blades was at the end of its, life cycle on a roofing. So the silicone coating that was put on there brings us back to 20 years of warranty.
Oh, wow.
So we, you know, there again, sustainability, longevity, roll back through that. The next few slides are kind of like how we used our local money to renovate, like I said, those outbuildings, and do some work that was muchly needed, as you can tell by our scoring tower at the soccer complex. So basically we went in, put new metal on it, rewrapped the outside, put a few new doors on it, and put some new sidewalks to it, kind of meeting the ADA standards. But even bigger than that, we basically conditioned the space with a PCAP unit, which allowed Patch's guys to come in and put in a server, which now we can put cameras out on our baseball complex, our soccer complex, stuff like that, which sometimes seem to be a heavier vandalized area, just because it's all by itself away from the buildings. So we thought that was a win-win on both sides.
Question,
Yes.
is that building expanded or is it just?
No, that's the picture, and I didn't mean to do that, but when I tried to blow the picture up a little bit, it kind of looked like the building went like that. But it's the same frame.
It's different.
It's just we put, yeah, it's just different angles, but the same frame, we just put new skin on it.
Understood.
Yep, yep. All right, next one. So our soccer shed, same thing, renovated, and that picture is deceiving too, because it is, like Dr. D said, it's different angles. So it's kind of showing it a little different, but it shows that we raised this end down here up a little bit. And then if you see the other side of it, there's actually an overhead door in there. But I wanted to mention one thing that's huge here was the doors were replaced, stuff like that. We had a lot of theft going on out in that, that shed, and you know where it's located. It's all the way in the back corner. So it's hard to kind of get around there. Again, it was good to have the cameras, when we leave the cameras out there and stuff like that. But basically the sustainability of securing equipment. And that equipment is not cheap, the padding and the pole sticks and all that stuff that go inside that building. So that was money well spent, I thought on my own. This one shows the new baseball storage irrigation shed that replaced the old baseball storage shed. And you see an example of where somebody threw a fastball and put one through the back of the window there or the door. So this shed basically serves as a storage unit and an irrigation shed. And you're gonna see in a later slide, the older irrigation sheds we have did not allow us to put in, and everybody knows in the city of Seaford now, the big thing is the backflow preventers. It did not allow us space inside those buildings to install the backflow preventers. So we thought it's a win-win to build a facility that basically takes care of the equipment needs, but also takes care of the irrigation needs and stuff like that we need.
Did our guys build that or we hired someone to do that?
This, we hired out the shell, and then Mike Short and our guys come in and finish it out. Over the winter, our plumber and electrician will be moving all of the stuff over. So they'll be moving all the equipment, the irrigation controls, all that stuff inside. So it's kind of a dual effect on that. Just that the timing was the concern, and that's why we got the shell done by an outside contractor. The old existing ticket booth out at soccer, which will be going away, is basically replaced with a new, same thing, a multi-purpose building. So the irrigation controls for the soccer field come in inside of that building, and then there's a ticket portion also. Next one. There's one of the old irrigation sheds. So you see the difference in it? It's just a makeshift shed that maybe, I don't know, 30 years ago, some maintenance guys put up or something like that. So basically all of our controls are still out here outside. It's just the piping and stuff is inside. where in this building, everything comes in one, so it's all in one place. Next. And this one, because we know the athletic building, which I'm very proud of, we not only though at the athletic building got a new training facility, we got sustainability for our uniforms and patches, or Cam and I were talking about that like a couple weeks ago. We're gonna be able to increase the longevity of our uniforms, and that's huge. I mean, you guys know how much the uniforms cost every time we buy them. So now they can be laundered in that facility, they're stored in that facility, and I wanna say that Vince is doing a great job of making sure that they're turned in, they're clean, they're put up in storage. So if you go in there, you can see the storage containers, the storage racks all labeled up, and all these uniforms are accounted for now, where before, I think had got sheds, you know what I mean, stuff like that, they were getting vandalized, they were getting stolen. I mean, all
Flooded out in the pit.
yeah. Flooded in a pit. So, the other thing I wanted to mention was repurposing our Esther storage facility. So I remember Linda and Corey coming to me and said, hey, we need storage buildings. I think we have to go rent them. And I was like, guys, I think you can build a building for what we're gonna pay in renting these buildings that aren't gonna be there any longer when we're finished with them. So we did, we put a pole shed up with local money, some local money that was freed up by Esther. And we stored all the excess furniture, because if you guys remember in phase one of COVID, half of the furniture in every building had to come out and go somewhere. So basically, we pulled all that furniture out, put it all in that building and left it alone, you know, and then when Esther went away, or COVID went away, we pulled all that furniture back out and put it into our buildings, and new cafeteria tables were stored in there. So it was used multiple times for multiple reasons. Now, it basically houses our new building ground shop. So, and it's in a better location because we struggled with my maintenance guys getting in and out of the old facility, which is the athletic building, because of the location of behind the middle school. So now they can come pretty easily in and out, and it also combines with our bus shelter, allowing Kim some more room to put buses back there. Next one. All right, so I want to finish by saying we already have 40 projects in works for this coming summer. So Buildings and Grounds is working hard to try to stay ahead of our old buildings. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a few questions. One, I have a statement. Kudos to everyone involved. That takes a lot of brain power to strategically plan every piece of money that has to be accounted for, and look at the buildings of how we want to spend, right? And like you said, you didn't give any money back, but we can see where the money.
Yeah.
So like kudos to the whole group, because I know that takes a lot of brain power to make that happen. One thing I was thinking about when you were talking about our middle school, when it's time for us to rebuild, strategically, have you guys or the executive team pinpointed an area of where we would build?
So we have some options out there that, when I used to have the community meetings, that we had like an option A, B, and C. We haven't revisited lately just because they haven't passed any CMs. But we were thinking of, you know, if we could basically go buy a piece of land and build a new high school, then we would build a new high school, move our high school to that high school, and then move our middle school to the high school existing. And then just go from there, you know what I mean? Like, use the middle school as a satellite for a little while to kind of renovate some of our elementary schools. Because remember, the next renovation for our elementary schools basically involves ripping all the drop ceilings out, putting sprinklers in, putting new lighting in, and putting new HVAC equipment in. So that's a huge undertaking. It's not something that's gonna happen in a year. It's probably like a couple year process. So at that point, it kind of gives us that floater building to kind of float around with. And at the end of that, there's been some talk about repurposing.
So and the other piece to understand is if, when the CNs start getting approved again, they don't want you to build outside of the town. Because they want you to be able to connect into a sewer system.
Right.
Versus that, so that starts to limit where you can go as well, so that's also something we think about in these meetings that we have and everything.
That's the reason why I asked, because SEPA doesn't have a lot of land within the city of Delaware.
Right.
That we have pinpointed some areas.
And as last resort, I mean, I guess a last resource, we do have the land that's the baseball field and the soccer stadium are sitting on now. The architects mentioned in those meetings that we could build a new high school there. But the problem with that, my concern with that is the traffic problem. Like now we're just adding to a traffic problem that we already had. So I think we have to get some separation there if it's at all possible. It may not be possible, but if it is possible, I think we need some separation there.
So then we have to figure out then where we'll put the baseball and the track.
Yeah, exactly. That's the second part of that. We would have to figure out how to manipulate the fields to kind of make all that work.
And honestly, it's a moot point until they decide that they're gonna go with some other formula besides growth.
Right. Understood. I just, if they say go today, do we have something?
And it's not, so it's not that fast. It's a 2-year process just for the front part of it. So that's Dell, Denrec, all those guys, including approving the piece of land that we did pick out, that we did come across. So like Dr. D said, it's kind of, the brakes are on. Like you really can't move forward with that, even trying to prepare for it, because that whole thing has to be approved prior to it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like your hands are tied. You're at a standstill until they approve us again. Yeah. But we do have a thought process behind that, trying to figure it out.
It's fun to think about.
Yeah, it's fun to think about, exactly.
And I don't have a question, I just a comment. When you started the presentation, you were saying, you know, if you know anything about architecture, and what popped in my head is, yeah, we didn't, but.
But now.
We learned a lot about windows and change orders and new
I was
things.
thinking half of what I know I learned in this boardroom.
You know, I'm like, you know, we've learned a lot because of transparency and bringing the pictures and bringing the architectures and to actually present alongside you. We learned a lot, you
Okay.
know, we do appreciate, even though, you know, give you a hard time.
Oh, no, I like the hard time. I like.
But, you know, as you're reviewing this stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, we've seen that. I remember that, talking about that in a board meeting and whatnot. And I also just wanna also say, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree, we can walk in other schools and I can tell you that Seabird is top tier for its cleanliness and. Yeah, you know, always, and it doesn't.
I appreciate that. But
It is
take kudos there.
true, like, it doesn't matter if you're showing up for a field day or showing up for an award assembly or just showing up, because Jeff shows up sometimes and, you know, and.
That's how you do it.
You know, and everything always looks so nice. So you guys do, piggybacking off of what Jeff said, you do a great job. So we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I just a comment, just how proud I am of us as a district, going around talking to other folks, and I remember like, it was a big part of like, you know, the SBA means like, what are you guys gonna do? We're about to hit this cliff with, ESSER money, like, what are you gonna, how are we gonna keep these people, how are we gonna do this? And I was like, you're like, what are you guys doing? And I was like, we built stuff. We built stuff, we bought stuff, because we knew that it was gonna run out. So we didn't wanna put ourselves in the situation that you guys find yourselves in right now. So just seeing that final report and like it all come to fruition and, you know, just being able to look at everybody else with my head held high. Like,
I think
yeah, we don't have these problems.
I think a perfect example of that is the pie charts. So when I was putting those in, I was like, most other districts, you would flip the chart.
Mhm.
Truthfully, you would flip it to see the other side, like the smaller portions for us was larger portions for other districts, just hearing the stories throughout districts. So like I said, thank you to you guys, because it was support from you and administration that allowed us to do and move quickly about it, and get ahead. Because a lot of districts later, I think in ESSER, figured out that, oh my gosh, we can replace mechanical equipment, or we can do this, or we can do that. And it was too late. The contractors were tied up. They weren't going to make the time frame. So then they had to change gears and do it another way, which I think was probably wasteful at that point, because now you're doing something you didn't really want to do, but you're going to make sure that the money's spent.
Right.
Good point.
Would you say that this has pushed us back from going to like referendum?
I do. And I think it's multiple referendums, to be honest with you. And like I said, I don't want to pull the wool over anybody's eyes and say that we're in great shape, because we got some needs as we go to. We have an older roof on a high school that's still hanging in there. We're maintaining it, but eventually we're gonna have to replace some of that on the older portion of the building. And, all the rest, I am proud to say, most of the rest of our roofs are under warranty. So we're back under 20 or 15 years, whatever they have left on them. So we're in good shape with that part of it. The chillers alone, and you guys know, we're over $1 million projects.
Yeah.
So every one of them could have been, easily another referendum, to try to replace those things. So yes, absolutely. I think we kept the community out of referendum quite a few times in this process.
That's what I was gonna mention. I guess all this, when we're talking about tonight, a lot of this is public information too.
Right.
So I know I haven't got any calls and I haven't heard any board members talking about people calling from the community, having complaints or problems with what we're doing. So that, again, that's a flip the hat to you guys and here at the Stevens School District. I mean, I might get called on something else, but it's not about us spending money or anything like that. And that's pretty good because, I wouldn't know how to answer it, but not having to answer it is even better.
Right.
I can walk around and take your credit. So the answer is, yeah, we got in there and we dug in deep. We made it work, but it does happen and that makes our community, like I said, please be out there to know that, we're not making them calls, we're not on the news.
Right.
And so
I feel good about being able to answer to anybody of how we spend our.
That's right.
For sure.
Mhm.
I feel solid on that.
We have the packets to prove it.
Yeah.
I got pictures and everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So, all right, guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You stole all your thunder, Patches?
Yeah.
Pat, you gotta top that. Pat,
We got a short one.
you gotta top that now, Pat.
Drop the mic here. So the priority around finance and even around some of the technological expenditures we've had was that we'll modernize the funding model to support our district operations. So one of the things I've told y'all several times was that the methods we have been using, although effective, were not efficient. And I want to make sure I hit on that again because there is changes forthcoming that y'all need to be aware of. And I've kind of been, I've been very transparent with you about the changes needed. But what I want to hit on there is that change for the sake of change is not what we're talking about. Change for making us more efficient and better is what we're talking about. And that's really caused some heartburns for some folks as we started talking about possible changes that we are doing. And again, as I get into more detail here, you'll understand some of that, but it really is. So first of all, doing OpEx versus a CapEx approach for some of our major, most specifically technological expenditures. What that is we've taken, y'all probably in the past heard, oh, we're gonna go out and buy a phone system, or we're gonna go out and buy a new security system. One of the things that we did as part of our extra money is we actually were able to get off of this old model where we buy all this equipment and then in 5 years it's too old to use again. Then we buy all this equipment and in 5 years it's too old. What we did was we went to this operating expenditure model where we bought cloud-based systems that over time will get upgraded and evolve. Also, by doing that, I don't have to have a guy that's here supporting, and I say guy or the person, a resource that's actually here supporting a camera system that's going to age and then start breaking. Because it's all controlled from the cloud. The only thing we have is the cameras and the same with our phones. Our phones aren't here on an old phone system that is going to go bad over time. Although our upfront expenditures are a little more with an operating expenditure model than a CapEx expense. We don't have these major real heights that we can't predict over time. So what you see is it stabilizes over time. So any questions on that? That's the first piece. Another piece we're moving forward towards is an all funds budget. This is one of those areas where people aren't understanding, I think, why we do that. And as you see tonight, some of the things I'm going to present, even in our board report, you'll see that a lot of people don't understand that your authority is bigger than your local budget that you are governing, because you're actually not only governing a 10% match, and I use that, this may be transportation, it could be the hiring of educators through unit count. That when you agree to do the 10%, or if you agree to do the 30%, you're also saying that the state is on for the 9th. Because you've agreed locally to support part of that, they're agreeing, and that's part of how code's written. I mean, they say if you are, you go through unit count, and if you're approved for these units, then you're approved for hiring these folks. And when you do that, you're saying that, you know, we're good for this and the state's going to pick up the other piece of that. So I just want to kind of make sure that, you know, in this example, you know, people would say, well, that's $100,000 decision. No, you're making $1 million decision in that situation because it's a 90-10 split. Is that making sense? And that's the piece. So what we're going to be moving to, again, is an all funds budget. And I mentioned that prior, and we're in the works to try to get that going now. And I think that's going to be a key piece for y'all to be able to have complete transparency. You're going to see even in the taxes, when I present those later in my report, and a few other areas, I'm already making minor adjustments. And I promise y'all I wouldn't do it all at once. I'm trying to do it a little bit along so that it meets your needs and you can kind of see that change over time. Any questions there?
No, good.
Updated apps being purchased through the data service center and to allow for point and click and ease of access for budget owners versus spreadsheets and paperwork. One of the things that we've been doing here a lot is embedded spreadsheets that update other spreadsheets, and when there's a lot of possibility for error, there's paperwork we do that could be automated. And so what we're trying to really do is, again, it's not change for the sake of change, but in finance and in tech, you know, you're talking to the former tech guy too. If we're doing it all on paperwork, there's greater chance of something getting misdone, miskeyed, and so if you actually have it in the system on the front end, going with some of these additional apps is going to allow for, use an example, we hope to later this year start to migrate to the data service center as an app for timesheet. Then we can do away with the paper timesheet platform that we pay to process now, where we go through, we think this is right, we enter it, we go back and check, and then we got to chase that paperwork, and they'll be able to enter it, and then if it's right, we approve it, it flows directly into the next system, and then everything's kind of automated. It's going to basically cut down on a lot of steps and give us a lot of time back, and time and FTE hours and minutes are money. I mean, the more efficient we can get, and the more we give back people their time. So, next slide. We're going to start to train the budget owners soon in FSF and digital versus paper-based. I was kind of talking through that with some other district CFOs. I think the main people that probably are going to be trained in that initially are the ones that are in here. I don't know that long-term, because this is one of the concerns that we'll want to necessarily make our budget owners and our buildings, which are our principals, have FSF access, because I really think that our goal is to keep them as instructional leaders that are doing that part. But I don't know yet until we get further into this and we kind of move forward. So again, I want to do it slow. I don't want to push too much. So initially, it's going to be our major areas, like it's going to be the Doves, it's going to be the Christies, it's going to be the Gigi's, you know, to be able to go in and transportation.
We don't have any money.
But it's going to be their departments that are those major areas that need, and so we'll get them in. And again, if you think back to why we even moved to our building admins having FSF access, is it was to actually also build that capacity, and we call it the administrative what do you call it? The
bench, the pipeline.
Pipeline is to build that pipeline of resources that also can move in as people transition and move or retire and that sort of thing. Another possible change, and this is kind of where I wanted to talk to y'all some, and then have you ponder on it for the future. One of the examples and best examples was a possible change that's coming with enhanced MCI. And I think Dr. D has mentioned the CFO and chief memo went out recently that was talking about the change in how enhanced MCI would be spent, so that you don't have to spend all of the money up front before you can access regular MCI. Had to be spent before you get it enhanced, and they're looking to make some changes. But one of the things that I learned through the process this year, as we had set last year's tax rate, is that I was sitting there and Doug kept coming to me and he was like, Patches, when am I going to have my MCI? And I was like, well, we don't have enough in the tax, about what they call the holding tank. And so the holding tank didn't have enough in it, and it never gets enough in it. And again, later in the meeting, you'll see my financial report, and you'll see that we got a $5 million deposit last month. And so the reason we, wait to do MCI work after October every year, because that's when we get our big tax deposit. If we could move to a place where we could tweak our tax rate going forward, which may mean increasing it slightly, so that we could actually get money to preload. After 1 to 2 years of doing a preload, recognize that in July, you would have enough money that MCI could start in July 1, not in October. So what we're doing is we're not actually charging the taxpayer more. We're just saying we need to get a little bit more now to front load what he's doing, so that in the future we can access that money. Why? You'll see in my board report tonight, that Doug's almost 100% spent on his local buildings and grounds budget. He's not spent that much. He had to put it in there so that he could get the projects going, so that we could do the magic, so that we can now go back and recode after we got it. So all this work has been done that now we have to redo, just because of the way the system and the tax rates work. So in the future, you may hear me come to you and say, hey, this is the fix of that issue with MCI, and we want to actually look at doing that. Any questions on that? Because that's a big one.
Are there other districts that do this, or we're gonna be, okay?
There's other districts that do that approach, that have actually, I can't tell you all that do it and some don't, but it's also, a strategy of whether or not you want to be a reactive approach to this, or if you want to be a proactive and be strategic about it, so that you don't have to. Does that make it close? I think we in the past, and you look back through the way we did a lot of our things, is we were more reactive in some of those taxes. We only going to pull it if we need, versus pulling it to get us ready for what we need to do, so that we can get more efficient.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering why DOE, when come up with that strategy for the whole state, districts.
I'm not sure that it's been discussed. I know we discussed it in our SPI meetings, the enhanced MCI was, I think, put out poorly, and we can't pass it up as a district that needs, right? So we're talking almost $300,000 that they basically, when they passed, the bill and everything, bringing it in, they were saying that your MCI, and I understand why, but they were saying your MCI has to be spent prior to being eligible for your enhanced MCI. So at that point, like Patch is saying, we were able to carry our money over from 1 year to the next, because remember, a lot of our work, majority of our work is done in the summer when students are gone. So now we're kind of behind the 8 ball, and that's exactly what he's talking about. We're trying to get ahead of that 8 ball.
No, that makes sense.
In front of it.
Makes sense. I think it's about the fear factor of the fact that something did happen, and then you guesstimate that you're gonna have that money now. And then at this time frame, based on all the other stuff you did, taxes, all your commitments and stuff, you're saying, okay, we should be at this number. So I'm gonna ask for that $300,000 up front. But then some reason, something crazy happens, and it didn't happen that way. Now you got $300,000 that you're not accounting for. So now you got to figure out how to pay for it. Now you're gonna wait till October before you can get that big pot of money in order to make that happen. So then you got to put the contractor and everybody else on hold for a while, or if they're gonna commit and say, we'll continue to do the work until you get the money. So, but I agree, you have to do that. I say that based on fire service. Yeah, we do the same with fire trucks too, with the city and everybody else, we go to them and say, hey, but we've already doubled our alarms this year already. We already know we're gonna need more stuff. That's why we wait. I mean, the trucks are gonna break down. We doubled everything, so I understand what you're saying. I think it's a great thing to try to do that, and we could be the initiator of it here at Cedar School District to make that happen and see that it works. Other people buy into it,
Which leads us kind of to the next thing is, tuition is also funded through that process.
Yeah.
And we're working on ways to maximize the potential of that tuition so that we, can actually, I think last month it was, you asked about, and you mentioned tonight about the idea of a referendum and there could be one for capital improvements, that there also could be the fear of one having to be here for current expense. And what we want to do is make sure we keep our current expenditures down and manageable, not necessarily down just because things do go up over time, but manageable and manage through that process. So it's maximizing pieces of this equation. It's not just one thing that we can do. And because of that, you know, we, one of the things that I mentioned, and this kind of goes with the prior bullet, was minimal tax adjustment all along may be a better approach than always trying to stick to the same tax. And the reason I say that is those minimal adjustments over time, you know, maybe, I don't think we want a lot of fluctuation, but, you know, if we do a little bit along to actually get to where we can fund these other things, it will at least help us to get to a spot where long-term, because what I don't think we want to do is get to a point where I mean, I hope in our tenure where none of us are ever in the situation where we're out of money and we've got to go ask for the current expense to do it all because we didn't think about doing it a little bit over time. And so sometimes doing it a little bit over time to keep us going through what we do locally without a referendum may be the better approach than waiting until we get to a point where we're forced to go out to referendum to do it. Hope that's making sense. Yeah. Any questions? Well, that's my 2 slides and.
You got the great version there.
Yeah.
He's on. But we're a good team. I love it that we work together.
That's awesome.
So my only question, or maybe even a suggestion, no, I think it's a great idea, you know, in Seaford, we definitely try to be less aggressive, like, we're not trying to go back and clean it up, we've done a lot of things first, you know, we're very proud of that. So, because of, you know, as Mr. Rice was talking about earlier, not getting a lot of phone calls and stuff, when we're thinking about this new model, as far as like, doing the tax adjustments along the way, do you guys think that's gonna be something where we need to, like, you know, talk to the community, let them know that this is what we're thinking about, this is the reason why, because the ESSER has gone, it was great while it was here, but now we're back to business as usual, like the 2019 school year.
We would definitely use the mechanisms that we have, whether it's community outreach, whether it was social media or calls, just to explain kind of that process, each step along the way, whether it was the tuition tax rate, whether which match tax, just to say, you know, there's gonna be an adjustment here, whether it's up or down, because realize that some of these things, they go down. I don't know if you recall in years past, one thing goes up, another thing goes down. The ultimate tax bill for the community member, they see no change, right? It just kind of depends what's going on at any one time. But definitely explaining those things, why it's happening, what it means, what fund it kind of contributes to, and what the long-term benefit is. Yes, we would absolutely make efforts to explain that over time.
And one thing that I want to call out, like, we were only talking how many hundreds of thousands for you to access? It was 300 and some change, wasn't it?
300, yeah, like 300
that we had to
30, 40,000.
Yeah, so 1 penny of adjustment brings 22, almost 23,000. So we're not talking about a lot of change if we can take some of those areas that do go down and leave them where they are. So, and we're talking about over time as well. We're not talking, so to do some of this, we're not talking about also going out and charging a whole lot on the front end. With the exception, one thing we gotta be aware of in the future is reassessment. With reassessment, there is gonna be an option for y'all to do a one-time adjustment to the tax rate based off of that. And that's one of those things that, you know, in conversations, we're gonna have to look at the line. Yeah, we're just waiting for it now to kind of see, and we really don't know the impact, we don't know what other people are gonna do, and so, again, you said, we don't necessarily have decisions off of what others do, but it's just one of those things that's gonna have to be a conversation of
Absolutely.
as we move forward, because
He wants our phones to be ringing off the hook.
So
Constituents.
the original reassessment is meant to be a zero.
Oh, no, nothing.
What was, can you
A zero.
again, a zero?
Net zero impact or
Yeah,
something.
zero impact, so it means that our net revenue is supposed to stay the same.
Yeah.
But we have a one-time opportunity to make an adjustment to our tax rate to increase it by what percent?
Oh, it's 10.
10%, yeah.
But,
So, you know, we'll have to discuss that when the time comes, when those
I
chips
think
all
I
fall.
got my letter,
Yeah.
my reassessment letter, I got my letter, I think last week,
It makes it real when you start getting those assessment letters and you're just like, oh, wait, this is.
yeah.
Yeah, go to Walmart, it's my favorite.
Right. But, you know, but for, my thought process is, you know, our district has people that live in town and, but also people that live, as I would say, in the country, right? So, like, some of us have our own septic and our own wells, but then you have people that also live in the district, in the city limits. As you were talking about the 10 and the 90 type thing, they're being affected differently because they're having to pay for their water and pay for their sewage and all that stuff. And as someone was talking about, as you were talking about the backflow system, I've seen a lot of scatterbutt about that on social media, you know, something else that people got to pay to put in. So anything that we add, even though ours may not be nowhere near to that extreme, but just letting our, you know, our community, our Seaford family just know, I know you're dealing with other people's stuff, but this is what we're looking at and this is why. You know. That's all I got.
And the other thing I wanted to add is, you know, I've been a part of two other districts and, to certainly the district level. But Doug, ever since I guess a year ago now, when those grounds started coming to me, and so Doug and I meet every Wednesday at 2. And, Patches attends the majority of those meetings as well. And so we constantly are talking about that, and it almost, and not to say this in a bad way, but painstakingly at times going over these numbers to maximize everything. And I mean, it was getting down to cents. I mean, at one point when we were dead set on, we were not getting back. And we didn't, and so, a big congratulations goes to these two gentlemen who worked tirelessly to maximize every penny for this district.
I can't tell you. Emails I got patches. You gotta make sure it's involved. I got you. I got you. Then I go to sleep at night and say, oh, if I got it.
Yeah.
Hey, look up for the email. Look up for the email.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I really.
$37.60.
I'm happy to get the rebates for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Getting those coupons.
All right, let's see. Next item is professional staff leave and absences, and that is like, Cam, that's on you?
Yes, and if it pleases you, Madam President, I can go through 6.05 and 6.09 like.
You know, I do like when you do that.
Okay, I thought so. So take a look at 6.05. We're not making any changes to it, but if you recall, what we're doing as we go through this policy review is we're gonna put reviewed in there. So when stuff comes up here like this, last time this policy was revised was 1996. I'd like to think it's somebody that's looked at it since. But now when we're all gone, be able to see, oh yeah, they did, nothing changed up, but they looked at it in 24. So that's what's going on with the policy. And the reason we're doing that is because there's a change in the regulation that's going on here. So, and it's really on the back end, at the end with donated leave. So there were some changes in law this past legislation session that changed how we have to do some stuff on the donated leave side. And so our attorney, who represents 15 of the 19 districts, worked with some of us in like what we have in place and everything, and developed a new model policy that we use. And what we do here is we take that policy language, put it into the regulations. So when you look at your marked up side, basically the old donated leave is completely gone and you replace it with a new donated leave. And so that is the same thing that's happening for 6.05 and 6.06, and the same thing that's happening for GDC and GDCR.
Okay.
And you're asking, why can't we just have a donated leave policy for everybody? It's because the standards that we use have it broken down. Cause we talked about that, but then when Karen and I went and looked at it, we saw that there's not like a place for donated leave there, so we kept it. We're going by that system, we kept it that way. So basically, the changes that are being made in this regulation in let me get it right, GCC-R. It's the same change that can be made to JDC-R for support staff. So they were the same before, and now they're the same again, they just have to be in two places. And the same thing for GCD, there is no change in the policy, it's just in the regulation. So that's what, and you're not necessarily looking to vote on it, we just want to bring the regulations to you, and once you understand why we're doing that, and you know, Dr. Savage and Mr. Wright both sit on that policy committee that meets once a month to go over those types of things. So that takes care of those lead portions of both of those regulations. Later this evening, you're going to look to to do the second reading of IKFB graduation exercises, which leads us into the regulation that goes with this. So there are a few changes in the regulation, because of the change in the policy, we kind of streamlined it, and I'll be very honest here. We kind of put in place what we're doing, and so, I'm not telling ourselves, but we're not following the policy and regs that were previously there to how things work, because graduations has, and the way we've done stuff has changed since 1989 when the policy was revised. And I don't think it was the fault of anybody, it's just different things changed, and then we get into what happened in 2020, a lot of things changed with it. So it had a lot of stuff in there that we kind of just got out, that wasn't done, and like we tried to do with everything, streamline some stuff. And then we also put in some stuff to help with number 2 in regards to the regala. And because it wasn't necessarily something there before, and this way, it's not just a parent coming in and saying, oh, well, the principal just doesn't like my kid, that's why they can't wear this. No, there's policy and regulation that says that the principal has that authority to regulate that, which is what we've been doing. But this gives now a little bit more support that anything would ever, somebody would challenge something, we have something to go back to that kind of supports and protects us in the district. Like it. So that is everything. Once again, that's a regulation. So that'll go in place after, you know, the second reading of IKFB this evening.
As Mr. Cameron closes.
As he closes, I kind of like, number 3D. Talking about the attire under the gown, remember some people walked out of their shoes and stuff like that.
Yes, we have, when I can speak as the former principal of the building, I would have several discussions about it. You might want to wear these 3-inch heels, but if it's wet enough, you're not getting, your shoes are stained when you get back up. And everything, but you know, trying to just get everything in a good natural place.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so thank you for covering all those. Any questions from Mr. Cam on any of that?
No, I won't let him say go Ravens,
No.
you know.
Oh,
18-16.
It's fighting for
all right, so we'll get to the voting on that in a little bit. But first, we're gonna go to 7.01. And that is school choice. Mr. Dole, is there anything you want to tell us related to the? It's pretty clear. And I appreciate the added paragraph to let us know what's going on there. Thank you. Okay, all right, so that is an action item, and Dr. Woodson, you got us on that?
I do. Jeff Benson, I'd like to make a motion to approve school choice application 2025-75 and to deny school choice application 2025-76 as presented.
Marcus, right, that's
There's a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Any abstentions or recusals? And that motion carries. The next item on our agenda is field trips, and we do have one for Fred Douglas, 5th grade on May 27th, National Constitution Center from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. in Philadelphia. Students will visit Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, National Constitution Center, aligning directly to what they're learning in civics. And I need a motion to approve.
Mark Strada make a motion to approve the bill agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. The next item on our agenda is facility requests, and we do not have any one requested right at the moment. So we will move along to voting on 7.04, graduation exercise policy, and that is I need a motion.
Jeff Benson, I make a motion to approve the second reading of IKFB graduation exercises policy as presented.
Mark Strada, second.
All right, there's a motion with a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Next item on our agenda is 7.05, the waiver that Cam is about to talk to. After that.
So it's waiver season. So the first one is the 98% rule. And just want to remind you that all of our 6 buildings are overstaffed by what the unit count gives us. The reason we ask for this waiver is sometimes we move some stuff around. I'll give you an example. Sometimes we can use some different funding at the elementary level, which allows us to have the teachers that beyond what we qualify for, but then taking units that maybe an elementary earns and sending it to the secondary in order to maximize what we have to do that. And we've done this every year. It gives us the flexibility. So if there's ever an audit, it shows that you have waived this so that we can staff our schools appropriately based on what we feel we need and maximize the funding, especially like in Dr. Jeanette's money from Title I and opportunity.
Yes, sir.
And this is what you usually post on the door, isn't it?
Yes, it has been posted.
Yes.
Karen comes, looks for me as soon as October rolls around. Hey, you gotta do the waivers.
Yeah. All right. All right, so that is the action item. We even need a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve 7.05 waiver of 1704.
Mark Strada, second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Next, we have 7.06 waiver pursuant to 1705A.
Okay, so this is our class size waiver. So in grades 1 through 3, you're supposed to have a ratio of 1 to 22. In some of our classrooms we're good, in some we're not. I mean, I'll be very honest with you, with trying to maximize immersion. Sometimes we obviously start over that 22 because you do lose through attrition as immersion goes on. So in a lot of our immersion classrooms, we're at like we're at 1 to 28 or 1 to 30. So that's one of the reasons we bring this here. But one of the things that you can do in order to avoid going to this waiver, if you so desire, is you can start counting the time that pairs go in support and different things. But to be honest with you, it's much easier to do this just because you could be when we go to this waiver tonight, we could be saying, we're 1 for 22, we're good. And then all of a sudden you get a whole bunch of students that roll in and you're not good anymore. So really a lot of this is based around our immersion program, being able to get as many students out as possible in the early grades. And then just making sure that we get an influx of students as we tend to do through the course of the school year, that we're not the 1 to 22 ratio.
All right, this too is an action item, so we would need a motion.
Mark Strada move to approve the waiver pertaining to section 1705A subsection A, Title 14 Delaware Code regarding the ratio of students to instructors in any class in kindergarten or grades 1 through 3.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. The next item on our agenda is our financial report 7.07, and Mr. Hill will present.
So, said I'd go slow with the changes, so I'm starting to gray out the things that will go away when you finish, in January or probably January, February timeframe with your final budget. So what I want to hit on is, that we are roughly at 33% of the fiscal year. And we are at 35.83 total percent expended. So we are slightly over, but I was going to hit on a few items. So we are aware that a few of these are trending higher, and I've had conversations with those folks that do have higher budgets trending. And the two that I really want to highlight, though, is one that I mentioned a little while ago, is if you look at Doug's expenditures, he is trending higher. I'm not seeing this because I'm so close to it, so I got to step out here. So if you look at Doug's, he is trending higher. And one of the things we talked about with the MCI recoding is that we're gonna be able to recode that. So it will actually be going down as we do what we're trying to do. Hence why I had the discussion with you about not necessarily increasing the taxes, but just modifying how we do things so that we could fix that in the future, so that it would just hit that line from the get-go, and his local budget would have never actually had to been hit. Because what that is allowing us to do is access state funding instead of using the local funding with the chances of actually, so what we're doing is we're just setting ourselves up for success in the front side of that. The other area that you're gonna see that's trending higher than normal is student services. One of the conversations I've had with Mr. Zoll is that, when we bought some of the recent, security things that we bought, like weapons detection and stuff, there's a local match to that. And I could have taken that local match and I could have put it anywhere. And you would have never saw that his budget was over if I did that. In transparency and in reporting in 3 years, when you asked me over the past 3 years, what has Mr. Zoll, what has Mr. Henry, and what have we spent on school safety and security? By putting it under a bucket that is basically responsible for, over time, we'll be able to look back and determine how much we've been spending to maintain these programs. So think of it as a program area expense as opposed to, so what I'll be doing is asking for a one-time budget increase when we get to his, because I can't adjust these without your approval. So what I'll do is ask for you, that's not saying that I'm not gonna take it from somewhere else. And or potentially lower somewhere else. I'm just saying for him, for this year, we had to use that money to get access to the federal dollars. So if we didn't, we were gonna lose it. So I'll probably ask for a one-time increase for his budget just to support that program. And then at the end of the year, when we go for next year, we'll make adjustments about how it would be. Just to make sense. Overall, then, we are at roughly 1 million still in recovered, basically 861, and we, are at 3.18 total, expended, and that equals that 35 when we actually go from, so if there's no questions on this, we'll move to tax collection. Tax collection. So what you're gonna see here is we've had a really good month with taxes. We got that $5.5 million deposit I mentioned a little while ago. What you don't see, and it came in, but did not hit our books until November 1st. But next month, you'll actually see the preload of the veteran and disabled veteran and elderly tax preload that the state gives us. So we've got another, I think, $500,000 in that. So we've got some good chunks coming in. Y'all may not pick this up, so I'm gonna point it out. Last month, this said a much lower number, okay? The reason is that in the past, that number was not all inclusive of the taxes you assess the residents, okay? What that was in the past was more, let me see here, I think it was more, so overall, right now, we're at 7.2, and last year, we only bought in 6 million and some change. What this report was doing in the past was only showing you one of the taxes you assess as opposed to them all. And I wanted you to be able to see that at the end of the year, you've assessed the 9.3 instead of the 6 and some change that you would have done in the past. The importance of that to me is being more transparent so that you can know kind of where we are going forward. So that you can see that it's not just the local 9,800 we call it, it's also all the match taxes. But the important piece for you to understand there is if we don't assess the match tax, then we don't get the state match to that. So it goes to be, so we've got to put up again some money to access state money, and by doing that, we get access. So those have now been included, and so it's more transparent here. Again, what I had told you earlier was we would move to an all funds budget. And so if you can go back one slide, I just want to show you back. This is only 13 million of what you've seen in the past, right? Now let's go to slide 3. Here's our set asides. They're holding constant until we get to maybe January. And we may adjust those, but now let's move down to our bottom slide. Bottom slide, yeah.
No back, right?
That's it. You actually have a $62 million budget. So do you see what I'm talking about when I talk about all funds? The 62 million and the 13 in the first line weren't equal, right? And so what I want to do in the future, this is what you're seeing on that first slide. What I want you to see is all of this accounted for in your report. That's what we're working on. That's the changing we're driving towards. It's a lot to do that. I mean, people have to modify some of the way they're doing things, but it's a good approach and it's transparent to y'all. Because again, when you do some of these things like the matched taxes that I just showed you that we're now accounting for, I wanted you to see why, well, there's matched tax. So where is that? Well, it was never accounted in that tax report that I just showed you. Now it is, and I'm showing you that. And I want y'all to see all of that. We'll continue to make changes like this going forward, but are y'all okay with that approach going forward? And is that something you'd like to see?
Yes.
Okay. So, with that said, overall receipts to date are roughly 52 million. So we were at a good point that of all the monies that we brought in. We've had a lot of things get loaded over the past, past month really, with a lot of things that continue to come in. So that has gone up quite a bit since last month. I think that is all I had for you, unless there's any final questions.
Good job.
All right. Like, oh, I do need to point out this. School charter and choice is starting to hit, and we are showing that as a loss in revenue, as I told you. So that's why you're starting to see numbers there. And that's that initial piece that we want to set. I didn't want to highlight that, and I mentioned. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, let's do the action item. I need a motion.
Definitely gonna make a motion to approve the monthly financial reports as presented.
Orchestra, second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carried. The next item on our agenda is our long range agenda, and you can see it on the screen. I do want to point out that, wow, November's over.
No, how did it happen?
Point out the closing for Thanksgiving, so families in the community, please make sure that you are aware of the days that school will not be open. So we have the 27th, 28th, and 29th. There's a parent palooza tomorrow at Fred, so please look at what time your scholar first, third, fourth, and fifth grade, what time theirs would be. Looking at the high school's open house. No, I'm sorry, eighth grade open house will be at the high school. Am I seeing this right? Yeah, December 4th. Okay. So then I have a really interesting. I think I'm getting myself a little confused on this. Is this so eighth grade can see the high school?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm sitting here wondering, Jeff knows what I'm about to say. What are they loading all those stuff, like how is it gonna work? Okay,
Yes.
I was like, okay. All right, good. So if you have an eighth grader, please plan to come to our high school, because we really want to keep y'all in our district.
Yes, we do.
December 5th, you have your multicultural night, and that'll be at Fred. We have a chorus concert at the middle school on the 10th. It's 'tis the season, y'all, to get jolly, so get ready to listen to all the great music. Kindergarten night of the arts at West on the 11th. Cookies with Santa on the 12th at the high school, so bring your kiddos out to see Santa. The winter concert at Central is the 12th. We have a paint night at the middle school on the 12th as well. Parent night out at Central is the 13th, and at West is also the 13th. And then our next board meeting will be on the 16th of December. So please, if you have kids in multiple schools, just make note if there are things that may be the same night, just so you can plan accordingly. All right, next item on our agenda is executive session, and I would need a motion to come out of public session into executive session.
Orchestra, let me enter into executive session.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That motion carries and it's 7:33 PM.